Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Paper 1 and Paper 2 walkthrough for A-Level Geography. Before I begin, just would like to say very quickly that this is my interpretation of materials produced by the exam board, including training that I've attended. Let's get into the actual paper then. So I'm going to concentrate mainly on Paper 1, although pretty much everything I say can be replicated for Paper 2. I am going to delve into Paper 2 as well, but as the main teacher for Paper 1 for the physical geography section of your A-level geography, then clearly my strengths kind of fall more towards Paper 1. Now, what we'll do first is just have a quick kind of run through of Paper 1, get a feel for it. Then I'm going to basically get into more detail on how to approach each of the different questions. Now, with any exam that you have in school, the first thing that you should do is in the exam, actually have a look at the first page before you get into the actual answering of the questions. Instructions are here. Make sure you actually read the instructions. If we kind of just move up here, I'll just get myself a pen. First off, you can see that you're able to use a calculator in your A-level geography exams. Make sure that you bring one on the day. We move down here. You need to answer all questions in section A and section C. And there's a choice in this exam between question 2 or 3 in section B. Basically, it's between glaciation and coasts. You've been told coasts, so you must tackle coasts. Obviously, you need to answer the questions in the spaces provided, although obviously additional space is also provided. Again, calculators may be used, and this is really important because students drop marks here. Any calculations must show all stages of working out and a clear answer. Okay, make it obvious what your answer is. Box it, underline it, write answer beside it. Okay, so if you've done lots of working out and it's a bit messy as to where the answer is, signpost it to the examiner, but you must include your working out. The amount of students that lose a mark because it's not shown, okay, make sure it is apparent on the page. And that's it really for the beginning of the paper. Let's move on from the instructions. So section A here is tectonic processes and hazards. And this is literally 4 marks, which will be distributed between maybe a 2-marker and 2-marker, or it may be broken down further, which we will look at now. And it's normally a skills-based question or series of questions, and then it moves on to a 12-marker. So here we can see we've got a resource-based question, and it feeds into a 2-mark here maths question. Again, look, you must show you're working. And then we keep moving in tectonics, and we go into 2 1-markers. So we've got very low tariff mark questions at the beginning, and then we'll always go into this 12-marker, which will be assess question. And I'm going to come into assess later on in my walkthrough. We'll keep going through the paper then, and as we move through the paper, we will come to the glaciation section, which you don't answer. Let's keep going. There you go. Glaciated landscapes and change. You're not answering any of that. You will be answering the next section of the paper here, which is coastal landscapes and change. Now, this is going to begin with a 6-marker, and it is a explain question over here. There's the command word, 6 markers, and then we'll move on to the next question here, which is going to be another 6-marker for 6, explain question for 6 marks. And we'll move through and we get an 8-mark question, which again is explain. And then we're going to move on to your first 20-marker of the paper, which is an evaluate question with 20 marks. Okay. One thing obviously to note there is coast is way more substantial than tectonics on this paper in terms of how many marks it's worth. It's also got the harder essay question, the 20-marker instead of the 12 marker you get on tectonics. Last section of the paper, just keep going down here. Apologize, keep skipping. And here it is, section C is physical systems and sustainability. This is water cycle and carbon cycle combined as section C. We begin with a lower tariff question. We've got a explain question here, and it's worth 3 marks. We're going to go straight into another explain question worth 6 marks. These are going to be on water cycle. And then we're going to move on to an 8 marker, which is another explain question on water cycle. So you've got 3 questions, all explain, all water cycle. The 2 longer questions are on the carbon cycle, the longer extended essay questions. And you've got an assess question worth 12 marks. Assess questions are always 12 marks. And then we're going to go into the 20 marker. Backtrack here. Here it is, the evaluate 20 marker. See if I can move that down just a little bit more. Back up, there it is. Evaluate question 20 marker. So we've got 3, 6, 8 on section C, all water cycle. And then the carbon cycle has the 12 and 20 marker. Okay, the more extended essay questions are from your carbon cycle unit. And that's just a very quick overview of the paper. Now, let's get into breaking the paper down so that you have a great understanding on how to tackle these different questions. Okay, let's start by just having a quick gander actually at paper 1 and paper 2, and this is taken from the specification. Okay. All right then. So first off, paper 1 and paper 2 are both worth, they're worth 30% of your qualification. They are out of 105 marks, and they are 2 hours and 15 minutes long, as per all 3 papers that you are sitting. I've already mentioned this, but topic 1 is on tectonics. And let's see if we can just thicken the pen up a little bit. There we go. So let's get rid of that. Topic 2 is a choice, but again, you have been taught 2B. There's a choice here, 2A glaciated landscapes or 2B coastal landscapes. So you are going to do 2B on this paper. And then lastly, topic 5 and 6 here, topic 5, topic 6 are combined, and they are the 3rd section. So these are together, as I've just shown you on the actual exam itself. Water cycle is times 3 questions, all explained, 3, 6, 8 markers. And then carbon is times 2 essays, 12 marker assess, and a 20 marker evaluate. And it's kind of broken down a bit more here. There we go, section A, B, and C. Moving on to paper 2, you'll see it's exactly the same in terms of it being, let's just pop this up a minute. It's being 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's 30% of your qualification again, and it's 105 marks. Okay. This time you are it's being broken down. I'm going to skip down here to where it says assessment overview. It's broken down into section A, B, and C. And this time we are looking at combining 2 topics in section A. That's topics 3 and 7, globalization and superpowers. You're going to get a 12-mark assess question, on both of these. Section B is a choice. Now, the whole topic is called shaping places, and you will choose which of the 2 topic 4s you've been taught. So topic 4.8 is regenerating places, and if you've been taught by Mr. Blankley, you'll be answering that section. Or topic 4B, diverse places, is if you've been taught by Miss Moore. Please clarify with your teacher which section that you're doing. And then lastly, there's another choice in the final section, section C. This is looking at topic 8. And here we've got a choice. You'll either be doing 8A, which is health, human rights and intervention, or topic 8B, migration, identity and sovereignty. okay? Unless things have changed after this video, you will be looking at topic 8B. So they're just quick overviews of the two papers. Next, assessment objectives for geography broken down into AO1, AO2, and AO3. And AO1 is just basically your ability to demonstrate knowledge and understanding. AO2 is the application of that knowledge and understanding. And you can see percentage-wise, there is way more out of the 3 for AO2 across the exams. And lastly, AO3 is basically your ability to use resources. So using a variety of quantitative, qualitative, and fieldwork skills, and that's worth 26 marks. If we skip to the bottom here and we look at the 3 papers, we can look at percentage breakdown. Paper 1 and 2, exactly the same spread of AO1, AO2, and AO3. But the main thing here is there's greater percentage at your application of knowledge and understanding. So it's not just the ability to regurgitate information on the exam paper, but it's understanding and applying that knowledge that you have learned. And you can see a quick difference here between paper 1 and 2. These are the same, but paper 3 here has a lot less AO2 and significantly more AO3 compared to papers 1 and 2. That's the major difference between 1 and 2, more AO2, more application of knowledge, and paper 3 is the ability basically to analyze resources. Okay, moving on then. So this is the summer exams, June exams in 2018, and you may want to pause it here so you can kind of look at the raw marks breakdown for the grade boundaries. So A star, aiming for an A star, you're looking at 270 marks out of 350. Looking at a 240 for an A, 209 for a B, 178 for a C, 148 for a D, and 118 for an E. Anything below this and you are coming out at a U grade. Just in terms of the previous specification, both the A star and the E grades are slightly lower. Now let's break this down for the 3 papers. We've got paper 1, 2, 3, and this is your coursework, non-examined assessment. Main thing to see here, the mean mark is actually slightly higher on paper 1, but marginally so versus paper 2. Standard deviation is also slightly higher on paper 1, but you can see there's not really much difference between your 2 papers, paper 1 and 2, in terms of challenge. Okay then, so what else could we learn from the June 2018 exams? Some of this, not going to be overly relevant to yourselves. More information, the better though. Basically, coasts, which was much more popular than glaciation. This is a point that we all need to be aware of, is some evidence, I would say a lot of evidence, especially looking at your mocks, are running out of time on the 20 markers. Stop there. 20 markers are super important and critical to the overall grade that you will get on paper 1 and 2. We must ensure that we finish those 20 markers thoroughly, and in my opinion, they out-prioritize anything else on the papers. If that means you are a student who starts the exam by completing the 20 marker, then so be it, okay? If you know through practice in class and in mocks you are running out of time, get that 20 marker done first, potentially work backwards through the paper. 20 marker, then on to the lower tariff mark, which might be a 12 or an 8 marker, depending on which section A, B, or C we're on. Just a quick note here is that they're using hazards as an example here, but I think this can be used for all 12 markers. There is some overwriting on the 12 markers. The space provided is the space they're expecting you to fill. Again, there are also notes from the exam board of shorter tariff questions being overwritten as well. I'm going to break down the expectation on like a 4 marker so that you can ensure that you are writing efficiently. Too much description on assess and evaluate, which means that you're not appropriately applying AO2. It's application of knowledge, not just describing what you know. Okay, so if you read back your answers on an assess question and on an evaluate question, if you are not using key phrases such as this meant that, or as a result, or this suggests that, if you're not using key phrases, it means you are describing too much, and it is going to lower your overall mark level-wise. Key point here from the exam board is students aren't responding to the command words. Okay, in class, and I'm going to go through it in this walkthrough, we've given you command word overviews, we've given you structures, and you should be in the habit of underlining or highlighting a command word in every question. Okay, this surely should be tackled appropriately by all of you. And last one is missing out key words in questions. For example, here the exam boards use the word communities. I'm going to tackle this in this walkthrough in a little bit. Next, so this is paper 1 analysis for section A, B, and C. I'm not going to say too much here. You may be interested in this and you may want to pause it, but the main thing to point out here is that the SAMs and the 2018 summer exam followed the same format, and that's the same for this specimen as well. So hazards had 1AI and 1AII, and they're worth 2 marks on the SAMs, 2 and a 2, same with the 2018 exam. And 1B was a 12 marker. We don't do glaciation, so skip to coasts. And coasts had 4 questions, 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3D, 6, 6, 8, and 20 marks. Same on the SAMs and on the 2018 June exam. And then water, carbon, and energy, 4A down to 4E. We're going 3, 6, 8, 12, 20 marker. And the command words were exactly the same. Calculate, state, assess, explain, 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 evaluate, explain, 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 assess, and evaluate. And you can look at the average marks students were getting on these questions. Interestingly enough, you're looking at about 7, well, nearly 8 here on a 12 marker. Skip down here on the 20 marker for coasts, about half marks here, 10.98 out of 20. Skip down to this 12 marker, 6 out of 12, and then 9.42 out of 20. So you're looking on average on the 12 and 20 markers, students getting around very close to only half marks on average. Compare that to how well you've been doing in your mocks, and you can kind of benchmark where you are against national. Before I go any further, I'm just going to come out of PowerPoint a second, discard those annotations. And let's just go to the exam board website. Let's skip up over here. Here we are. So if you go to Google and you simply put in Google Edexcel A-level geography, it'll bring you to this page. And you've got at the top here, you can see you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tabs. And within these tabs are information that you can access outside of what we're doing in class and me and your other teachers directing you. So you can be independent here. Now, if you go to specification and sample assessments, here you can find the specifications. You can download that, put in your folders, save it electronically for your own reference. I know some of you do like highlighting off or referencing the specification as you go along, especially for revision purposes and also for referencing the spec on your cue cards, your vision cards. Now, down the bottom here, you can see the sample assessment material for A-level geography. So if you're looking for a mock paper or a past paper to complete at home, then you can access this. You can do it. The mark scheme is there as well. If we scroll back up, exam materials, this is where you can actually also access previous exams. At the moment is just the June exams, although the AS papers are there as well. But remember, they don't follow the same tariff questions. So be careful at using that, but you might want to look at the type of questions that are being asked because it's the same subject knowledge, the same topics that you've been taught. And if we just go back here, we can see it goes back to 2017, but this is AS only. The first A-level exam was taught in 2018. Depending on when you're watching this, you may be at the point where there's more than just the 2018 exam available. If we come across to teaching and learning materials, it is within here where we can find useful documentation that you have been provided in class, but you may want to re-find. This is where we can find, for example, for the paper I'm talking about, paper 1 and 2, you can see here we've got A-level geography, paper 1, examiner marked student responses. These are really good. These are PDFs where the exam board have taken a range of student responses. They say how many marks they've got and why they've got those marks. So if you are struggling to understand maybe why you keep getting similar grades, or you're a bit unsure of the marking of any of your mock exams, or you just want more insight from the exam board, download these, have a look at these. And if I scroll down a bit more, you can see down here when you get onto your NEA, I know I'm talking about paper 1 and 2, but we're here. You've got NEA example 1, 2, 3. This is the write-up from a candidate, and examiner commentary. Again, they are worth looking at, especially if you are at the point of writing or just before writing your NEA. I'll just keep scrolling down because the last thing I want to point out here, a bit more guidance. So if you're on your NEA, there's a guide here from the exam board on coming up with titles and how to complete the proposal form that you need to hand into your teacher and need to be approved before you visit and collect your data. But the main thing I just want to point out here is this PDF. Okay, we've got a Maths for Geographers PDF, which goes through all the math skills and exemplars needed for A-level geography. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint and continue looking through our paper 1 and 2. Okay, so this is feedback from the exam board from the summer, and again, similar to paper 1, command words not being adhered to. Again, running out of time on the last 20 marker, as well as some 12 markers. Again, if that's you, start from the back and work forward. Issues with options, question 3 versus 4, question 5 versus 6. What the exam board means is that some students are answering both or starting one, realizing that they've started their own section and then moving on to another one. Please ensure that you know which section you're answering. Skip back to earlier in this video when I did talk this through. Again, some overwriting in the earlier parts. That basically means on like 3 or 4 markers, students are writing too much. And last one here I wanted to point out for the human side is that this has been noted, and I've seen it regularly from the exam board, is students just not knowing their local versus their contrasting case study. Must know that. And then just some words that students are showing a lack of knowledge on, which is human rights, the word development, and the word identity. Nice little spelling mistake from the exam board here. Please ensure before you sit paper 2, you do have a working knowledge of it in terms of these 3 words and definitions of them. Let's go on. This is a breakdown or analysis of your paper 2. So again, you are doing globalization and superpowers at the beginning. There's just 4 questions here: 1A, 1B, 2A, I, 2A, II. It goes 412, 412. The SAMs and 2018 exam exactly the same. And it's an explain, assess, complete, assess. Shaping places is the next topic. You got 3A, I, 3A, II, 3B, and 3C. And we go 3, 6, 6, 20 on the SAMs, 3, 6, 6, 20 on 2018. And we go suggest, explain, evaluate. skipping down then onto the last section that you will answer. So you're going to do this here, and this is the last one. We're not doing this. Is migration, identity, and sovereignty, 6A to 6D, 4, 6, 8, 20 mark exams. Same on the exam, the similar 4, 6, 8, 20, and it goes explain, suggest, explain, evaluate. So what we can learn again from this is the SAMs is the same as the 2018 exam, so we know the structure we can expect. And then in terms of marks, again, we're looking at half marks on average-ish for the 12 marker, half marks nationally nearly on the 20 marker, and then the last 20 marker down here, that's a terrible arrow, is another half mark nearly. So again, averaging about half marks on the extended essay questions. So combining the two, what can we learn overall, or what is the exam board saying we need to be aware of, is the issue of too much overwriting on the shorter responses. Look at the time, marks, and spaces available. And in a slide's time, I'm going to give you a overview or guidance on how long you should be spending on each question. You need to know technical geography in shorter responses and link the ideas together. So to get to get 3 or 4 marks, you are developing your point. And if you're not doing that, you are not going to get those higher marks on those shorter response questions. And you need to be using technical geography. If you're writing terminology you knew at GCSE, then that is not appropriate, and you should have be at the point where you've upcycled the terminology and the technical geography you use in your exams. Issue with just students not reading all the questions. Obvious here is that something you should be doing, and you should be breaking down the exam questions anyway. Some of the 12 and 20 markers were rushed and poorly finished. We've mentioned this. Start with them first if need be. Some people not using resources effectively. I'm going to get into that. Local place being an issue on topic 2, and those keywords, development, human rights, being a bit weaker. Nation, state, sovereignty, failed state. Those words generally are done quite poorly on paper 2. If me saying those stressed you, go away, make sure that you've defined and learned them before paper 2. All right, just a quick overview here before we get into how long to spend on each question. We can see in red is paper 3, so that doesn't matter for us, so we're just going to cross these out. This is just the spread of the types of questions you're likely to get on paper 1 and 2. We've already got into this, so we can see 3 marks through to 20 marks. We have no 18 marker, no 24 marker. Here they appear on paper 3. And our keywords are suggest through to evaluate. I don't have much to say here. This is the exam board command word definitions list. Pause it right now, have a read through, just make sure you're comfortable with what each command word means, what its definition is, before I delve into these. Okay, so one quick difference to point out here is the difference between suggest and explain, because they are super similar, but there's slight differences between them. First off, suggest only appears on paper 2 in section B options, and explain is everywhere, which we should be aware of. Suggest is 3 or 6 marks, while we could have 3, 4, 6, or 8 mark explain questions. Major differences. Suggest questions are for an unfamiliar scenario. Okay, that's the major difference between suggest and explain, or one of 2 major differences. They give you an unfamiliar scenario, and then you've got to provide reasoned explanations of why something might have occurred. Okay, so basically they give you a scenario, apply your subject knowledge to it. Okay, and then the second major difference between suggest and explain is suggest must use the resource. They will ask you to study a resource, You must quote information from that resource in your answer. Explain questions might use a resource, they might not, and if they do, then you use it, but suggest always will. So, major difference. Suggest unfamiliar scenario, explain not the case. Suggest you must use the resource in your answer, must quote and lift information directly from it. Explain, you only do that if there's a resource, which is self-obvious. Okay, here is an overview of what extended or essay questions. So essay questions are anything that's 6 upwards. What essay questions are on each section. Obviously, at the moment, we're looking at paper 1 and paper 2. Ignore paper 3 because I have additional walkthroughs for this section, this paper, sorry. And you may want to have a quick pause of this and kind of look at the overview here and the assessment breakdowns for the AO1s, AO2s, and AO3s. 2s only, sorry. Moving on. Okay, so this is the paper 1 overview timing-wise. And one thing I'm going to point out is you only have, that's awful, that's circling, but you only have 135 minutes on this paper, 2 hours 15. The timing is super tight, okay? This paper is very demanding on how much you must write in the time that you've got. And you will be writing till the end, okay? I've tried to break down for you how long you should spend on each question, okay? So this is hazards, then we've got coasts, and then we've got water and carbon. So these are your 3 sections on paper 1. I've broken it down by question, which we've already broken down earlier, and then I've put beside it how many marks they're worth, and then how long you should spend on them. So for hazards, you're looking at 2 markers being 3 minutes only. That's all you have. If you spend too long on those small, short, low tariff questions, you are eating into the time that you really need on the longer questions. A 12 marker, the other one is here, you have 15 minutes. That's all for a 12 marker, okay? And that's also specified by the exam board. They only really specify how long on the 12 and 20 marker, and that's directly taken from them and from me breaking down the exam paper anyway. Going on to coasts, your 6 markers, which we've got 3 here, you've only got 8 minutes for them. That's it. That's all you have, okay? Again, can't be spending more than that, otherwise that's going to take away from how the time you need on those 12 and 20 markers. 8 marker appears here and here. You've got 11 minutes only. And then lastly, your 20 markers, and this timing again taken from the exam board, 25 minutes. This is very tight. There's no leeway here. The timings I've given you add up to 135 minutes. You must work quick, efficiently, to make sure you finish this paper on time, to make sure that you develop your points thoroughly for all the different command word structures, to hit the top levels, and to ensure you've covered everything in the time allocated. I personally would be printing off the SAMs and practicing this at home. So I would print the SAMs off, I would do the 2 marker, and literally put an alarm on your phone for 3 minutes and see how much you get through. Do a 12 marker, put an alarm on for 15 minutes, a 6 marker, 8 minutes, an 8 marker, 11 minutes, 20 marker, 25 minutes. See how long you're taking, and then you're going to have to adapt or practice. It's like a skill. You can train yourself to write more in less time. Okay, moving on. Paper 2, very similar. You've got 135 minutes, 2 hours 15, and we begin with globalization. We've got 412, 412 marker, and then shaping or diverse places. You lot, depending on which teacher you've been taught, 366, 20 marker. That's the second section, and the last section on migration, which is 468, 20 marker. 4 markers, you've only got 5 minutes to do. That is it. 12 markers, exactly the same as paper 2. 12 markers, you've got 15 minutes. They only appear on the first section. Your 6 markers, same here as per the paper 1, you've got 8 minutes. And your only 8 marker here, you've got 11 minutes, the same as paper 1. And then lastly, your 20 marker is 25 minutes on the third section and second section. I have put the 3 markers on here as well. 4 minutes, 4 marker, 5 minutes. This adds up to 134 minutes, which is down here. This gives you a minute to spare. Okay, again, it's super tight timing. Learn 12 markers is 15 minutes, 6 marks, 8 minutes, 8 marks, 11 minutes, 20 marks, 25 minutes. Practice it at home using the SAMs. Time yourself. Okay, are you working quick enough in the time that you've actually got for these 2 exams? Okay, before I get into the actual different types of questions, just a quick overview here of resources that you have. You all have the revision guide, which you should actively be using for revision. You've all also got the skills book. Now, this skills book here, okay, that is the shorter tariff questions at the beginning of each section, okay? Use that, practice it, so that you pick up those marks. The aiming for an A you should have as well. This is especially useful. They give you a lot of guidance and examples on the 12 and 20 markers. Math skills, okay, booklet here. Again, lower tariff marks, a lot of them are maths-based questions. And then lastly, you've got your workbooks. We've given you workbooks for every topic. I personally would have taken that workbook and I would make it into cue cards, or I would have made it into cue cards. That is produced by Hodder Publishing House. They're only going to get able to publish that if those exam questions are approved by the exam board, i.e. they are similar, or if not the questions that could appear on the exam. You could take the workbooks we've given you, you've self-assessed them, you've got access to answers to each question, and you can make those into cue cards that you could do retrieval practice on, i.e. question on one side, answer on the other, keep practicing them. All right, let's get into the actual analysis of paper 1. Again, I'm using paper 1 because I'm your physical geography teacher and this is the paper I've taught you, but what I'm saying here is transferable to paper 2. First off, this is question 1A on paper 1, and it's very similar to what we would see on other sections, especially in paper 2, where we've got a lower tariff question. We've got 1A, and it's with 2 marks. Okay, it's a maths question. And you can see here that to get your 2 marks, you're going to get a mark for the answer. Again, if it happens to be that you've done a lot of working out and it's difficult to see your answer, please circle, highlight, write, this is the answer. Okay, so it's clearly signposted to the examiner. But the other thing is this here, this is a mark, okay? It says you must show you're working. I've marked marks and I've marked for the exam board where students drop an easy mark here because this just doesn't appear. Last thing, this is 3 minutes only. That's all you've got on these questions. 2 things. 1, if you're struggling maths-wise, just going to take you over to this here. Again, you've got access to the teaching and learning materials. So scroll down, and again, you've got the Maths for Geographers booklet. Okay, use it. Okay, access that and use it. Because there's examplers and work model answers on there. And we come back up to HLS Geography YouTube channel. Okay, so go to YouTube and just put HLS Jogging, and we've got various playlists. Now, hit playlists, and you will see I've created an A-level maths playlist. Click on this, stop there, and I've just put 5 videos here. This is to help with the NEA, and also to help with the smaller tariff questions. So I've got how to do Spearman's rank, how to do t-test, chi-squared, standard deviation, and Lorenz curves. These could be kind of, you know, those shorter questions on, for example, this 1A on tectonics. Have a look at those if you do struggle a little bit with the math skills. And I would also have a look at, let's get rid of that, if you are struggling maths-wise, the GCSE Geography Maths playlist. I've got 9 videos here, how to do ratios, proportions, finding a percent, expressing one quantity as a percentage of another, what range, mode, modal class are, range and interquartile explained in the last video. Again, these could easily be the first questions on the paper, so have a look at that to help you with these questions. Now, last thing to point out here is 3 minutes. Quite frankly, if you struggle maths-wise, leave it. Okay, the 2 marks clearly are not worth as much as getting a 20 marker done fully or a 12 marker done fully. If you know you're poor at maths and you spend, let's say, 6 minutes on this, and you don't get the question right, you've wasted a lot of time and made no gains. Okay, if you know that's you're not, you know, you do struggle with the maths, leave it. If you have time at the end, come back to it. Right, next question. So if I go to the actual question paper here, I'm just going to bring it up. Let's scroll down to this question. So we're now on to coasts. This is glaciation. I want coastal landscapes. Here we are. All right, so I'm just going to use this as my example. So we've got explain how variations in the rate of coastal recession. Recession just means the coastline's been receding. Okay, think receding hairline. Nicely used mine there as an example. It means it's eroding. Okay, it's moving backwards. In Norfolk may provide evidence for the different approaches to coastal management. Now, grab a highlighter here. It says study figure 3A in the resource booklet. Look at 3A. And then it says evidence. You must, okay, in this 6 marker, use evidence from figure 3A in your answer. Now, if I just skip ahead a little bit here, we've given you in class these different structures and explain 6 or 8 marker here. For an explain question, you are looking at, for a 6 mark explain question, I need, sorry, this should be 2 P paragraphs. An 8 mark explain question is 3 P paragraphs. Now, by P, we mean point, explain, evidence. Although if you prefer, you can switch these over. That's absolutely fine. I do appreciate a lot of people prefer to go point, evidence, explain. Okay. But if you get an exam question and it says study a figure 3A, and it uses the word evidence, at that point, when you go, oh, it's worth 6, I need 2 developed points, point, evidence, explain, point, evidence, explain. So we're gonna have 1 point here. That's my first point, point, evidence, explain, and then second point, point, evidence, explain. And I want to see this. I want to see this well structured so the examiner can see that you've got 2 distinct points. The evidence is from the figure, and this question came with this resource here. Okay, this is 3A, and it gives you lots of information here. It tells us here the average rate of coastal recession in meters per year, so we can quote this information on our answers. It's given me 3 different places: Cromer, Overstrand, and Trimgum. Okay, here, obviously, the bars are telling me how much recession in meters per year. And it's telling me the types of coastal management. They're using seawalls and groins. There's no recession. It's clearly working. Down here tells me the historic rates. They've got groins, and now they're using strategic realignment. And then over here, they're not doing anything. No active intervention. They're not doing anything. And clearly Tringham has the highest rates of recession. They've given you 3 key pieces of information: meters per year, names of settlements, types of coastal management. We go back to the exam question, and here we are, the evidence section of our P. Let's say this is my evidence, EV for evidence. I need to be using that evidence there. Okay, this is where I'm going to talk about the names of settlements lifted from the resource, or or in addition to, I'm going to use meters of recession or erosion per year. I'm going to reference the type of management, okay, strategy that they're using there, okay, and I'm then going to go on to explain it, okay. So point, evidence, explanation of said evidence. Okay, let's quickly look at some feedback from the exam board, and then some guidance and structure from me. So here, I'm just going to skip down to what's relevant because they're talking about glaciation here. So first off, some didn't key into the resource, i.e. just what I said, they didn't use the resource. The skill is to link the evidence in the resource to an explanation. Make sure you do that. Evidence from the resource, explain it. You need to extract, lift, quote evidence from the resource. In coasts, okay, make sure, like I've just said, that you've lifted information, and then try to apply it to your subject knowledge, okay? Think about different types of management: geology, fetch, direction, wave type, and so on. Okay, structures, guidance from me here. Give me a second. I'm going to have to discard and reload. Okay, so guidance from here, structure-wise. Explain questions. If it's 4 marks and it says, be careful here, no amount of reasons given. Okay, sometimes the question will say, explain one reason why. Okay, it'll use the phrase one reason. Okay, if it says one reason, you can only answer that in one way. That's this structure. Okay, you make a point, initial point, and then you add to it, and you add to it, and you add to it. So you are taking an initial point and you're developing it 3 times. Point, key phrase, second point, key phrase, third point, key phrase, fourth point. My key phrases, you should all know that I love. This leads to, this means that, as a result. Whatever other connective phrases you use, I like them because this causes this leads to is all about explaining. This means that is analysis. As a result, forces you to evaluate. So if it says one reason, you've got to do that. Now, if it doesn't give you reasons, or it says 2 reasons, then you can use this structure, which is a 1 plus 1, and then you use a second 1 plus 1. Basically, 1 point developed, start fresh, second point developed. So this would be first point, key phrase, this leads to, this means that, or as a result, develop point. Second point, key phrase, develop point. Now, I haven't specifically said this, but what I would do, and if we just discard again and go back to the exam question, I would always make sure, even on a 4 marker, and this is relevant clearly for 6 markers, in the explain bit, okay, so in the final sentence of your developed point, be it on a 4 marker or a 6 marker, link back to the language in the question. So I would be linking back to back to this idea of why there are different approaches to coastal management. Okay, so you need to make sure you're linking back at the end of your developed points to the language of the question. Okay, make sure that your points link directly to the language of the question. All right, back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so 6 markers. We're going to go with the structure that you should have be comfortable with from class is 2 developed points or paragraphs. First paragraph, P, point, evidence, explanation, and then link back to the question's command words. As you move into the second paragraph, using an evaluative word to link the paragraphs together and to show and signpost to the examiner you're starting at a second point. First point, developed, point, evidence, explain, link to the command, the key geographical phrase or languages of the question, and then use an evaluative word to show you're starting a second point. Alternatively, on the other hand, okay, another point would be, okay, just use an evaluative word to move into the second developed point / paragraph, and you're using the same structure. P, point, evidence, explanation, link back to the question's command words. Okay, moving on, we're on to assess now. Okay, and this is taken from the exam board here. This is just some guidance there. Let's have a quick little look through. So a lot of students were writing over the allocated space, and a lot of the time this is because they were being too descriptive and general. There was often a lack of sense that they needed to write evaluatively. What this means is, even though it's the word assess, you're still making judgments. That's what evaluate means, okay? You're making judgments. You're looking at 2 sides, okay, of an argument in the evaluate questions. Here, it means you're weighing up your points. You're making judgments. Exam board was surprised, so this is important, of how many people failed to use place, geography, so referring to specific places, or data to support their answers. Okay, I've said this regularly that we are A-level geographers. Our answers should be authentic. Context is king. It is key that all your points are evidenced with real place examples and events and processes. And they're not all provided structure. Okay, and now I've given you a structure in class, and I'm going to go through the structure because that's what the exam board wants to see. All right, now we've looked at assessing class, but I'm going to break down this a little bit further for you. So this is the structure to an assess question. Okay, I've made it into a flow diagram. Factor 1, paragraph 1, and then we move into Factor 2, paragraph 2. Factor 3, paragraph 3. You must have 3 factors, 3 different developed points, 3 different paragraphs. And then that leads into what I refer to as a mini conclusion. Okay, now the exam board actually say you don't need a conclusion in a 12 marker. You will make a conclusion because the exam board needs to see judgments. And if you're not making judgments throughout your 3 factors, then a mini conclusion saves you level wise. Okay, but it can be 2 or 3 sentences. That's all I want to see. 2 or 3 sentences, overall judgment, succinctly make said judgment and link it back to the question. Use the language of the question. Now, at the start, so this is where the arrows are, the start of each of these paragraphs, I would like you to use an evaluative phrase. So you start each paragraph with one of these, okay? So, like I finished my first paragraph, start my second, I'm showing the examiner, okay, that I'm starting a new point, but I'm weighing up. That's what assess is. You're weighing up different factors. Factor 1, weigh it up. Factor 2, you're weighing it up. Factor 3, you're weighing it up. You're weighing all 3 in terms of the exam question. and I'm showing the examiner that I'm doing that weighing, I'm doing that evaluating as I go along, which we know the exam board have told us to do. Look, they're not writing evaluatively. We're doing it by using this language. So you start the next paragraph with however, showing that we're introducing a different point and we're starting to weigh up versus the prior. Okay, or in contrast, nevertheless, on balance, even so, similarly, but, okay. And then let's just use something like in conclusion, or the most important point is, don't have to rank them all in the conclusion, but if that's going to be a judgment, is that you just pick one as the most important, state succinctly why, link back to the question, do that. And lastly, every single one of these factors, factor 1 and factor 2 and factor 3, not the conclusion, must follow P's. Point, evidence or explain, analysis, significance. These can be the other way around, but it's point, explain, evidence, analysis, significance. Got to do it, okay? You should all know that structure. If not, learn it now. This is taken from the exam board. These are these are sentence starters. So this is sentence starters provided by the exam board on how you could start your points, how you could start explain, how you could introduce your evidence, and your evidence should either be from the resource. If it says study, okay, a figure, then that's where your evidence comes from, or it's your case study knowledge. It's your real place knowledge, okay? Then we go into analysis. Now, I personally, if I was yourselves, I'd be learning these analysis sentence starters, because I personally believe analysis is one of the weaker elements of your P's paragraphs. And I'd also say, like, if you're struggling with this, the easiest phrase to use is this. This suggests that, okay? That is one way. It's not as technical as it could be, but it's one way to definitely ensure you're doing a bit of analysis. And then lastly, we're going into significance. Now, significance is also quite poorly done. I'm going to talk about it in a bit more detail on the next slides. But again, you might want to look at these sentence starters and learn them. Add them into your exam vocabulary. Okay, so answering assess questions here. Okay, now this is what I would like us all to do when tackling an assess question. Now, before I do that, I'm gonna have a quick drink because I've been talking for a wee bit. Okay, here we go. All right, number one, when you look at the question, can you box, underline, highlight, whatever you prefer to do, the command word? Now, this is easy. It's assess, okay? So you're going to underline assess, highlight, circle assess. Number two, find the key factor, okay? If it's been given, okay? Most of the time it is, all right? And I want you to highlight or box or circle the key factor. Number three, box, underline, highlight the key geographical phrase. And what I mean by that is there'll be a key phrase in there, and it'll be technical geographical language that has been taught at A level that you want to that they want you to reference your points versus throughout the essay. I would quickly, number four, plan what your two other factors are going to be. Now, remember, let's go back. I've said that you're going to look at three factors. So factor one, this one here, should already be given to you in the exam question. Most of the time it is. But they want you to introduce two more of your choice. So I personally, number four, I would annotate onto the top of the question the two other factors that you're going to look at, okay? Straight away, think about the structure to your answer before you start writing it. Number five, obvious one here. I always say this. I think that you should just do this anyway. Just circle how many marks the question is worth to jog your memory in terms of, oh, it's 12 marks. It's assess. I need to write this structure, and also to jog your memory on how long you've got. 15 minutes. That's all we've got for this question. Okay. Now, we've tried different ways of tackling assess in class, and I've got a format here that I thought would be worthwhile looking at in this walkthrough. So this is answering assess, but it's helping with the S of your P's, okay? So we're thinking about significance here. Significance basically means make a judgment, okay? Judge how important that point is, that factor. Back here, we've got factor 1, factor 2, factor 1, factor 2, factor 3. Significance means weigh up how important that factor is. Judge how important that factor is in relation to the exam question. Okay, so let's go through an example of this. Okay, now here's a question I've got. Okay, let's imagine that we were doing this assess question. Assess the statement that, oh, actually I'm going to do this in Word. Give me a sec. And let's click on here. Okay, so assess the statement, Monsters Inc. is the best Disney film since 1990. Using 1990 because that's when Disney rebooted. Okay, that's when, you know, I don't know, the reboot is anything prior to that's like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast. 1990 onwards, it's like the reboot from Aladdin onwards. A bit of Disney knowledge for you. Okay, so we've got an assess question. Assess means that, well, let's go through this first. So first off, I'm going to just highlight my command word. And then I'm going to look in here for my key factor. Okay, and they've given me a key factor because they've told me that one factor has to be Monsters Inc. Then next, I'm going to look for my key geographical phrase, but obviously it's not geographical. This is, you know, movie or film related, and it's going to be this here. It's just the fact this is just it, the best Disney film. That's it. Okay, so I'm weighing up, okay, weighing up Monsters Inc. in terms of whether it is not the best Disney film, and I need to come up with two other ideas. So I'm going to annotate, like I've said to do. This is the fourth thing I said to do. I need to come up with two other factors. So I'm going to use Moana. And I'm just thinking of how you actually spell Moana. Is that Moana? I feel like I'm going to be annoyed at myself if I've just gone to spell that incorrectly. Is that how you spell Moana? Oh, this is going to annoy me if I don't look it up. Sorry, guys and lasses. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, let's go for that. Let's close that down. Okay, and let's go back here. So, all right, let's go with Moana. So I've got one factor here, Monsters Inc., two factors, Moana, and then third Disney film I'm going to go with is Wreck-It Ralph. Some of you are thinking, Sir's gone for Wreck-It Ralph. How random is that? Now, I'm going to stop with the little board for a second. So down here, and this is just me trying to come up with a way for you to visualize assess structures. So paragraph 1 is going to be Monsters Inc. Okay. Now, my second point is going to be on Moana, and my third point here is going to be on Wreck-It Ralph. So what I'm saying to myself really is I've got three factors, and how far do I agree? If that phrase helps you, how far do you agree that Monsters Inc. is connected to the main geographical phrase or film or here movie phrase? So how far do I agree that Monster Inc. is the best Disney film? How far do I agree Moana is the best Disney film? How far do I agree Wreck-It Ralph is the best Disney film? Now, let's start with, I don't know, I'm going to start with Wreck-It Ralph. Now, I'm going to write a point. I'm going to give my explanation. I'm going to give some evidence. I'm going to do a bit of analysis in my paragraph for Wreck-It Ralph. I'm kind of starting with point 3 here, but this could have been my first or third paragraph. But then I'm going to have to say how significant. We're thinking about the P's, that S, significant. So by that I mean, at the end, how far do you agree? Weigh up, make a judgment. How far do you agree at the end of that paragraph that Wreck-It Ralph is the best Disney film? I'm going to go with partially. Look, so I've got a scale here. I could say I don't agree at all, slightly, partially, moderately, substantially, significantly, extremely. So in the end of my paragraph, I'm saying I think partially. Did I say that? I'm going to go for partially. I think that Wreck-It Ralph is partially the best Disney film, but it's undermined by the fact that there are a lot of references to a range of characters from a range of different TV series, genres, films. And to be honest, if you've not seen a lot of them, you don't get a lot of the references. So there will be some adults and some youngsters who don't get the references. And I think that undermines your overall enjoyment of that film. I actually really like Wreck-It Ralph because I get those references. Okay, check me out. All right, Moana. I'm going to go with purple here. So I'm asking myself, I'm weighing up in my P's, the S of P's, how important, okay, how far do I agree that Moana is the best Disney film? Now, I like Moana, and I think a lot of people like Moana. I think people like Moana more than Wreck-It Ralph. I'm going to go with moderately, okay? And the reason why I've gone with moderately is at the end of my paragraph, I'm going to make a judgment, is that I think Moana is only moderately the best Disney film produced since 1990 because the culture, the Pacific Islander culture that the film is orientated around, I think has less interest globally. Less people globally will be able to connect themselves, their lives to that culture. It's very narrow, spatially, geographically, scale-wise. That culture. It's not like I don't know, Southern Asian culture or Western European culture. I think it's a much narrower spatial culture, and therefore people connect to it less. And I think therefore, overall, I don't think it makes it more than a moderately likely to be the best Disney film. Last one, then I'm going to go with. I'm going to add a pen. Why not? I'm going to use a different color that I've not used. Let's go for a pink. There we go. Pink. Monsters Inc. here. I'm now going to go with extremely. Okay. Might be, you can kind of see the fact that, in the end of the day, I did start the assess question with Monsters Inc. Okay, so I'm going to say that I think Monsters Inc. is my judgment. How far do I agree? I agree extremely that Monsters Inc. is the best Disney film since 1990. And the reason why is generally I just think it's a great film. But if I was trying to come up with a reason or a judgment wise, I think that it has a great moral to that film, especially to its key audience, its main audience being youngsters, which is that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Monsters don't have to be scary, okay? And if we extrapolate that, we could say maybe the moral of Monsters Inc. is that just because someone looks different doesn't mean they're a monster, okay? And I've ended up with a bar graph here, and clearly you can see that I've made an assessment. I've weighed it up. I've decided how far I agree with each of these factors. I've used the factor I was given, the key factor, Monsters Inc. I've introduced two of my own. I'm weighing them up. At the end of each paragraph, I'm making a judgment using this language here. This language is spoon feeding the examiner that I'm making judgments as I go along, which we said earlier is what the exam board was after. And then in the conclusion, I can use this to make a quick 2 to 3 sentence conclusion, which in my opinion is just basically going to be that I'm going to make the judgment that Monsters Inc. is the best Disney film since 1990 because I think it connects with a wider audience, okay, and will have more of a long-term hold more of a long-term interest to those audience as a result. How do you know? Like Wreck-It Ralph might date badly. Okay. All right then. Less Disney, and let's now move over to this question here. So let's look at an actual geographical question, and this question here is taken from the SAMs, and let's do the same procedure. Okay. Start with number 1. Like I said, for every assess question, command word. It's assess. Okay, 12 marks, 15 minutes. Then I'm going to pick out the key factor. Okay, what are they telling me to weigh up? Okay, I've got governance. There you go. I've been given one factor, and then I need to find that key geographical phrase, and they want me to refer to. Okay, to weigh up my paragraphs, my points, my factors, and that is the successful management. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to number my key factor. I've got 1 key factor, and now I need 2 more. Okay, so I know as a geographer that governance is one factor that might influence how successful a country is at managing a tectonic mega disaster like an earthquake, tsunami as a result of volcanic eruption, which can also cause a tsunami. But anyway, so what else could I do? 2 other factors. My second factor that I'm going to use is education. And let's go for monitoring and prediction. Okay, so I'm going to skip back down here. I'm going to type it in the bottom because obviously it's a little bit awkward writing it. And I need to put in the key factor I've been given. It's governance. Then I'm going to add in the factor that I've chosen, my first one, which is education. And then I'm going to look at my third factor, which I've chosen, which is monitoring and prediction. Okay, just like we did with the example, the Disney example that I've used. Let's just reduce the font size and go back to draw. We're going to go through the same procedure. Okay, so first off, governance. So I'm going to use a P structure, and I'm going to start. Let's pick up the pink again. I'm going to say, again, remember, you're weighing it up. How far do you agree? So I'm going to do my point, my explain, my evidence, my analysis. Then my last bit, 2 sentences at the end. How far do I agree? Sorry, how far do I agree that governance how far do I agree that governance is the most important factor in successfully managing a tectonic mega disaster? I agree. I think. Let's go with. I'm going to say significantly. Okay. And my judgment there is going to be using something like, I don't know, USA, San Francisco, land use zoning and building regulations. Because if good governance had taken place and that had been adhered to, it would reduce the impacts, which would be good management of a tectonic mega disaster. So I agree significantly that governance is important in managing a mega disaster successfully, and I will use that language at the end of my paragraph. Education, purple here. All right, and I'm going to say, yeah, it's substantial. I'm going to go for substantial, and my judgment here is going to be education is substantially important in the successful management of tectonic mega disasters, as it ensures that people are aware of what to do. Okay, especially in the short time they may have to evacuate, or the immediate moments of the actual tectonic mega disaster, like an earthquake, to reduce injuries and death. My evidence here would be maybe like Haiti and literacy rates being only 60%, 40% of people can't read and write. They're not getting a formal education. Okay, that's really going to reduce how well they prepare or manage within or after the actual disaster, especially in terms of greater impact on the poor, on those who are within absolute poverty. And then last one, how far do I agree that monitoring prediction is important in successfully managing disasters? And I'm going to go with, I'm going to say moderately. I'm going to say moderately here. I could use Japan as my evidence of the PTWC, basically the Pacific Ocean Warning Center. Okay. But the deaths were still substantial from the 2011 Japanese earthquake and tsunami in March. And monitoring prediction can't be done for earthquakes, so I think that undermines this entire point. Okay, it's only successful to a degree. Okay, and probably more so in developed countries, those higher up the Human Development Index than those much lower. If you're low on the HDI, you're probably not going to be able to do this to a much greater scale, and therefore the impacts are going to be greater on your communities. And then I would use this again in my conclusion. The most important, I'm going to use the language of the question. I'm going to use that key geographical phrase. I'm going to think about the fact that I've made judgments. I've been weighing them up as I've gone along. Okay, and I'm going to say the most important point is governance in terms of importance in successfully managing tectonic mega disasters, because it limits impacts, especially if building regulations have been adhered to. I don't know, something along those lines. In fact, I think if I skip across to my PowerPoint, I may have, yeah, I did. I may have actually also put an example here of how we would maybe write the end of a piece paragraph for monitoring and prediction. Therefore, monitoring and prediction is substantially important in the successful management of tectonic mega disasters, as it gives communities valuable time to evacuate. And I'm making a little bit of judgment here, a little bit tweaking it further to show that I'm evaluating to a higher level, as although this is severely limited if the country is lower on the HDI. 2 or 3 sentences, end of your piece paragraphs, show you're making judgments, show you're assessing, show you're weighing up, showing you're being evaluative throughout your essay. Do it. Okay, last little bit on assess, then we're on to evaluate, and then we're done. Okay, so this was produced by the exam board, and it is the hidden agenda of questions, and I've been talking about this. Many, but not all, assess and evaluate questions have hidden factors or causes. Okay, although the subject, and this is the key factor, that's what they're referring to, okay, is stated in the question, other subjects, other factors are relevant to the answer. Weaker students struggle to see this. Now, here they've used the example I've just used. Assess the importance of governance, key factor, subject, in the successful management of tectonic mega disasters. This question isn't just about governance. You have to use other subjects, other factors. Use the structure I've just gone through. Down here, same with evaluate. Evaluate the extent to which today's increasing demand for energy. So there's my command word. Increasing demand for energy is my subject, key factor, is the most important factor in modifying the carbon cycle. That's my key geographical phrase, my key geographical terminology that I must refer to throughout the essay. I'm weighing up demand for energy as my first factor. Then I've got to introduce other factors. And here they've given examples: deforestation, farming, land use, and there's more that you could use. So again, from the exam board, might want to pause this and have a read of it yourself. On paper 1 and 2, assess is used for extended writing questions in which students are required to use evidence to determine the relative significance, severity, role, and importance of something. That's my PE structure. That's the significance. That's the judgment that you must make. Important to address the key words in the exam question. Again, use my structure, okay, of highlight the command word, highlight the key factor, highlight the key geographical phrase, okay? And this is important. Ongoing assessment leads to higher levels in the mark scheme, spotting the significance of points made as the answer progresses. This is what I've just gone through. This is finishing each of your points with a judgment, with you weighing up how far you agree with that factor in terms of the key geographical phrase. Do it to get access to the highest level, okay, level 3 on 12 markers. Okay, we're nearly there. We're on to the last bit of this walkthrough, which is our 20 markers. Okay, quickly, this is taken from the exam board. 20 marker here was on evaluate the view that hard engineering approaches to course management produce more winners than losers. Okay, so we've got some struggled with evaluate, okay, in general. Key here, especially in a question where it talks about winners and losers, is you need to refer to stakeholders and players, a range of them. Think with a question like this, what's your scale and location? Are we talking about just one, like as an example of this question, sediment cell, or is it going to be the entire UK coastline or the world? Make sure you use your terminology correctly. Okay, so what some people are struggling here in terms of the evidence, the evaluate questions, is evaluate is making an argument. You need two sides to the argument, okay? Now, this was provided by the exam board here, okay? This here is also a mistake by them. That should say evaluate the view. Okay, so evaluate the view. In a globalizing world, national sovereignty becomes less important. 20 marker. Two sides of an argument, okay, is needed. But the exam board have used this this line here to say that basically some students would just say that they extremely agreed with that. They give one side of an argument, loads of points to say one side was correct, and that's unbalanced. Exam board did not like that. On the other side, they would say, the student would say that they extremely disagree with that statement, the exam question. It was unbalanced. The exam board didn't like that. Some students went in the middle. Okay, they sat on the fence. Okay, they said one side of the argument, the other side of the argument, but there was no language within the essay that showed them making an overall evaluation. Okay, you can't sit on the fence. Okay, give both sides the argument, but what they want you to do is the green. So you do evidence for and against, and you make a clear judgment, i.e., both sides of the argument. In the conclusion, I agree with the statement, but, or the other side, you give both sides the argument and a clear judgment, which is that you disagree, but. Okay, back up here. I'm going to go through a structure to help with that. The evidence they want here is in the form of relevant examples and mini case studies. Okay, skip down here. They want you to use a range of evidence. This is why big case studies are likely to score less well. So what they mean by that is they want you to use lots of mini, okay, case studies, not a big case study. Okay, so they should see you pulling in loads of different facts and examples that you've been taught. Okay, not just regurgitating verbal diarrhea of everything you know about, I don't know, Holderness coastline as an example. Okay, so it's thin but often case study knowledge, not thick but, as I say, used once or twice. And then lastly, clear judgments and conclusions need to be made. It has to be rational, substantiated conclusion that has came from a balanced argument. And this is the structure that we've been teaching you in class. Now, you can see I've color-coded it, okay? Blue at the top, you've got the introduction. Blue at the bottom, the conclusion. And then we've got side 1, purple, one side of the argument. Side 2, red, the other side of the argument. You must tease out of the evaluate question what the two sides of the argument are going to be. Sometimes it's nice and straightforward. It's signposted to you, okay? Coast question, winners versus losers, okay? Easily signposted to you, okay? So that would be, on one side of the argument would be the winners, okay, thinking about stakeholders and players, and the other side of the argument would be losers. Now, sometimes you don't get it signposted that nicely, but what they'll do is they may give you one side of the argument, okay, in the actual question, and then you need to tease out what the other side of the argument would be. In the intro, please do this, okay? 4 to 5 sentences, 4 to 5 sentences. State the aims of your essay, okay? State what the two sides of the argument are. State which side of the argument you are on. And you might want to say in a sentence how you're going to prove it. Then you're going to go through this structure. Follow the arrows along. We're going to start with side one of the argument, whatever that is. Let's say it was winners. And this is going to be the second paragraph of your essay. And you're going to give me your first developed point for side one, and you've got to use P's, okay? And then you're going to go into paragraph 3, and it's going to be your first developed point for side 2. And then you're going to skip to paragraph 4, and you're going back to the other side of the argument, and this is going to be your second developed point, again P's. And then you're going back to the other side of the argument for their second developed point, and then we're going to come back over, okay, to paragraph 6, which is the third developed point for side 1, and then back to the other side of the argument, okay, for their third developed point. So it's side 1, point 1, side 2, point 1, side 1, point 2, okay, side 2.2, side 1.3, side 2.3. And these points that you make, they obviously can compare and contrast to each other if you want it, okay? Doesn't have to be, but it could be that way. Lastly, the conclusion must happen. 4 to 5 sentences long, and you need to succinctly summarize the evidence you've presented. You can't bring in any other information or any new information or other evidence. It's got to be from your essay that you presented for both sides. And then you need to make a substantiated judgment as to which side you're on and why. Justify your decision, okay? Lastly, we've got to come back to this idea of using evaluative phrases at the beginning of each paragraph, okay? So here, I'm just going to put stars. Here, you start this paragraph by using one of these. So, however, you start the next paragraph here, smoothly used red. You use start the next paragraph with something like on the other hand. And then you go back and you're showing the examiner that you're evaluating. Okay, you're evaluating between the two sides as you go along. You go onto this here and you start this paragraph with yet. Move on to the other side and you start this with in contrast. You come back over and you begin this one with nevertheless. Back over and you begin this one with, I don't know, despite this. And then you come into your conclusion here and you're just going to use in conclusion, spoon for the examiner, you're finishing. Okay, now, before I go on, this has to happen. This has to happen. You want top marks, you've got to make an intro. You want top marks, you must make a conclusion. The exam board made a point of talking about there being a clear start and end to your essay. Do it. Okay, again, 4 to 5 sentences. You could do more if you've got time on your conclusion, clearly. Okay. However, if you do not include a conclusion, you are severely limiting the level that you can access. Okay. If you are running out of time and you've got 25 minutes for these 20 markers, time it. Check the clock at the beginning of the exam. Note how long you've got in each section. Know at the end of the exam how long you've got. You need 25 minutes to finish that last 20 marker. Okay. Note on the front of your exam when you should be starting the last 20 marker. Okay. Now, if you get into this point where you don't have 25 minutes, and I hope you're not in that situation, you've got to get a conclusion in there. So let's say you start and you go intro, paragraph 1, paragraph 3, and you're running out of time. Go to your conclusion. Do not do this here, okay, or this here. It is better to have, I'm just going to do circles. It's better to have intro, paragraph 1, paragraph 3, conclusion, okay, than you trying to do another developed point. Or let's say you get intro, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, you get to paragraph 4, you get to paragraph 5, time's getting on, you're getting a bit stressed, you're not sure you're going to get it finished, skip to your conclusion. Do not ever do one side of the argument, then the other. Do not do all of this here, all of this, then all of this. Because if you run out of time, you've given the examiner one side of the argument, you're not getting good marks. Okay? Now, what I would say here is you can, I'm going to just discard this because it looks a mess. I'm going to say that at home, if you use your workbook, all the workbooks I've given you, they've got in them 12 and 20 markers. In your, we've given you a overview of all the exam questions collated, and they also have 12 and 20 markers. I would sit and I would cue card up plans. Okay, 12 markers. You know you need 3 factors, so I would just basically bullet point for assess questions. I would have the 3 factors you'd use and just thin case study knowledge, just a fact or 2 for each one. Do the same here for evaluate. Plan out on a cue card what your 2 arguments would be, and then just have your 3 points for one side, your 3 points for the other side, thin case study knowledge, different case studies throughout, a point or 2 for each of these developed points. And then revise them, okay? Because then if they come up, you've already got structures. Okay, how to make your arguments. So when you're looking at the exam question and you're thinking, what are my 2 sides going to be? Well, here's some examples, some ideas. You could just go with costs versus benefits. Okay, look at the exam question. Does that apply? Learn these. Or you could go with just advantages versus disadvantages. Strengths versus weaknesses. So these are ways to come up with your 2 arguments. Some other ideas, maybe a bit more advanced. You could think about, well, think short-term impacts, okay, versus long-term, or short-term opportunities versus long-term, okay? So you could think about it temporally, think about it in terms of time, okay? Or scale, okay? Scale of geographical area, small scale versus large scale. Or maybe you can break it down to stakeholders, to players. Now, I've done it really broken down to a local resident versus a CEO. But you could break it down to, like in the course questions, winners versus losers. You could break it down into SEEP, okay? SEEP here is referring to social geography, economic geography, environmental geography, and political geography. So you could use SEEP, and you could have 2 elements of SEEP, social versus political, one side, the other side of the argument, economic versus environmental, okay? Other ones, here, some other ideas. Pause now and read these, but maybe something like reversible versus non-reversible impacts, okay? I don't know, adaptation versus mitigation here, okay? Just breaking it down into the fact that they are maybe higher on the HDI or lower on the HDI, okay? So break it down into 2 clear sides of the argument. Lastly, this was from the exam board. Pause it here, okay? And this is what they want to see. They do not want to see this here in 20 markers. This is probably the most important thing. Thin case studies, examples illustrate different points. Clear logical argument with a balanced view. Linked. One example idea leads to another. Use my evaluative phrases. And there's ongoing evaluation. That's where you've got to be doing significance, that judgment, same idea of assess, okay? Use the same way that I talked about the judgment, the weighing up, the significance in assess, that I was using them with the bars. Same idea here at the end of each of your developed points. Okay. General advice from the exam board, and we are done, okay? All right, be factual, obvious. Okay, technically sound. Use A-level terminology that you've been taught. Upcycle your terminology from GCSE. If you see a word that you could have used at GCSE, could you replace it as you write it in the exam with a A-level term? If there's technical terminology in the question, use it in your answer. Using examples of places. I've taught you to learn your case study knowledge. Responses need to cover all aspects, words, and elements of the question set. If the word sustainable is in the question, you've not used it in your answer, there's a major issue. If the word community is in the question, you've not used it in the answer, there's a major issue. If the word state or nation is in the question, you've not used it in the answer, there's a major problem. 4 to 5 line introduction, 4 to 5 line conclusion is a very good idea, wink wink from the exam board, and stronger candidates need to try and spot opportunities to take the question on and be as evaluative as possible. Right, lastly, the key difference between evaluate and assess from the exam board: pause, read, and lastly here, this is from the exam board on using resources. Basically, have a read of it, pause it. They're saying here that if you've been given a resource and it uses the word study, okay, study a resource, it means use the resource in your answer. Lift core information from it. Okay, all I'm going to say here is that I would pause. This is the assess 12 marker levels 1 to 3. Okay, pause it right now. Have a read through of the AO1, AO2s. It's very similar throughout, it's just the tweaks. But basically, everything I've said is my inference, my interpretation of literature from the exam board and training I've been on to help you access level 3. Again, with evaluate, pause it, read it. What I've just given you in this walkthrough is my interpretation and inferences of materials that I've read and training I've been on to try help you access level 4. That is it. Only other thing I would like to say to you, A-level geographers, is if you do come up over to back to the YouTube channel and you do go to HLS Geography, let's go back to it. We go back to playlists. I will be adding more playlists for A-level. I've done all the GCSE, but there are some playlists here. And all I wanted to point out that the most important one in my, two of the more important playlists, I will be doing a playlist for every topic. As an example, we've got A-level coasts has 65 videos. Okay, I'll do that for the other topics. But superpowers, I would say if for your superpowers, the case studies for superpowers are really contemporary, up to date. There's so many good videos out there on YouTube for it. They are actually generally really interesting to watch. Look at the superpowers playlist before paper 2 for those case studies to support your understanding of it. And the other thing I would like to point out here is the study skills section, especially any A-level student who's watching these videos at the start of the course. If you're struggling really with getting to grips with the expectation of A-level work, these videos by Crash Course are excellent. I would especially look at, I don't know, how to plan and organize yourself, how to focus and concentrate, how to get past procrastination, studying for exams, and really for my current, my A-level students who are about to go into their exams at the end of year 13. Test anxiety is probably a big one for some of you. I suffer from anxiety, so I appreciate how destructive it can be at times. Have a look at the test anxiety. I'm always here to talk about that if you so wish. And maybe look at papers and essays. Might be quite useful for those 12 and 20 markers. Last one, back to what I was just kind of saying about superpowers. If you put Vox Atlas in, Vox Atlas is excellent. This is, again, another brilliant resource. I've already obviously nicked a lot of these for my superpowers playlist, but if you're sat there and you're wanting to, brush up on this before your exams, your paper 2 exam, have a look at this. Especially, look, for example, why Ukraine is trapped in endless conflict. That's obviously great for one of your case studies. Trade wars is good for soft and hard power. Syria is good for Middle East case study. Why China is building islands in the South China Sea. Brilliant. Obviously, clearly, super important to your case study there. Middle East here, again, case study, superpowers. Basically, this playlist is great. Okay, they're interesting anyway, and it'll give you loads of support for that superpowers 12 marker. Anyway, A-level students, geographers, that is it. This has been very long. Thank you for watching along. I hope this has been useful. Please let me know if it has, and if there's anything else that I could do to help and improve these for the future. I'm going to smile at the camera and put my thumbs up.